Not that long ago, a plain white cargo van parked overnight at a Walmart outside Flagstaff raised exactly 0 eyebrows. Hang a curtain across the windshield, warm the bunk with a $5 heater, and sleep as free as anybody in America. Nobody blinked. Today, almost every trick on this list will get you fined, towed, or written up as a criminal, and a few of them carry fines north of $10,000. But drive out to the desert camps around Quartzsite, Arizona, and ask the people who live in their vans year-round, and you'll hear a very different story, because the folks who survived January on a parking lot budget still swear by half the things on it. Today, we're counting down 15 banned van inventions that could empty a bank account in a single traffic stop, and why the people who use them insist they work just fine. And number one is the invention that let a person buy an entire house for $3,000 right up until the insurance companies and the DMV slammed that door forever. But rewind before the fines and the tow trucks. Starting with the housing crash of 2008, people priced out of every apartment in America turned the plain cargo van into a driveway project and invented a whole catalog of gadgets and workarounds just to stay warm, stay clean, and stay invisible. Retirees on Social Security, laid-off tradesmen, widows who lost the house with the husband. Some of what they built was brilliant, some of it was dangerous, and piece by piece, the law caught up with every bit of it. This is all of them, what each one did, and the price tag it carries today. Number 15, the blackout windows. The first rule of living in a vehicle is that nobody can know you're in there. So van dwellers cut silver Reflectix insulation panels to fit every window and layered limousine tint over the glass until the inside of that van went dark as a cave at noon. It worked. It also broke the law in most of the country because state tint statutes set legal light limits for every window on a vehicle, and a windshield full of silver foil in a residential neighborhood is a flare gun to any patrol officer working the overnight shift. The tint ticket itself is small, often under a couple $100s per window. The problem is what comes after, because an officer who stops a blacked out van at 2 in the morning starts looking a whole lot closer at everything else: the registration, the insurance, the mattress in the back. The full-timers will tell you a cheap set of window covers has saved more people from freezing than any shelter system ever built. The parking enforcement office keeps different books. Number 14, the mattress passenger. Pull the back seats out of a van to build a bed platform, and you've also pulled out the seat belts, which never stopped anybody. A couple heading down Interstate 80 through Wyoming would run it the old way. One person driving, the other stretched out asleep on the plywood platform over the wheel wells. Every state in the country now writes tickets for unrestrained passengers, and a person riding loose on a mattress at 70 miles an hour becomes a projectile in any hard stop. Worse, if there's a crash, that homemade bed turns into evidence, and the insurance adjuster and the opposing lawyer will both point at it. The old-timers shrug at all of it. They rode loose in the beds of pickup trucks as kids from Bakersfield to Boise and lived to complain about seatbelt laws. Maybe so. Physics stopped grading on a curve somewhere around 1990. Number 13, the all-night idle. Before diesel heaters and lithium batteries, a person freezing in a Cracker Barrel parking lot in Ohio had one heater that always worked: the engine. So they idled all night, every cold night, burning a half-gallon an hour to keep the vents blowing warm across the bunk. Then the anti-idling laws arrived, and today more than half the states restrict how long a parked vehicle can sit there running, with fines that start small and climb into 5 figures for repeat offenders in the strictest cities. The dwellers will tell you an idling ticket beats hypothermia every single time, and there's no arguing the math from inside a frozen sleeping bag. But that engine running at 3 in the morning is also the sound that wakes the neighbors, and the neighbors are the ones who call it in. The idle kept people alive for decades. It also drew the map that enforcement followed straight to them. Number 12, the borrowed outlet. Every strip mall in America has an exterior electrical outlet somewhere on the back wall, and every laundromat, park pavilion, and gas station has one too. 100 feet of orange extension cord from Harbor Freight, run under a wheel and up through the door gap, and a van dweller could charge a phone, run a heating pad, and top off a battery for pennies that belong to somebody else. That's the problem. Pennies or not, the law calls it theft of utilities, a genuine criminal charge in most states, and it stacks with trespassing the moment the property owner decides to press it. The dwellers point out the electricity involved costs less than a gumball, and they're right. But a criminal record follows a person a lot longer than a gumball does, and that misdemeanor on a background check can cost more than any fine on this list. The cord still works. The math around it never did. Number 11, the storm drain hose. A sink in a van fills a gray water tank, and a gray water tank fills up fast. So somewhere along the line, people started running a hose from the tank straight down to the street gutter and letting the dishwater find its own way home. It looks harmless. It's soap and coffee grounds. But every storm drain in the country runs untreated to a creek or a bay, and the clean water Water Act and local dumping ordinances treat that hose accordingly, with municipal fines that can pass $10,000 for illegal discharge. And some cities now flush colored dye through drains and run cameras to trace exactly where a flow came from. The full-timers argue that one van's dishwater is nothing next to what a single car wash sends down the same drain legally, and it's a fair point that has never once won in front of a judge. The people who last on the road learned to dump gray water in a toilet or an RV station. The hose people learned about the fines. Number 10. The tiny wood stove. Somewhere around 2015, miniature wood stoves the size of a bread box started showing up in vans, bolted to a heat shield with a shiny little chimney poking through the roof. And there's no denying the appeal. Free fuel from any parking lot tree line, dry heat that bakes the damp out of everything, and a flickering fire door that makes a rusted Chevy Express feel like a cabin in Montana. Then come the rules. Fire codes were never written for a wood stove in a moving vehicle. Insurance companies void policies over them. National forests ban them under fire restrictions half the year. And in states like California, a single ember out of that chimney in August can turn into a liability that makes every other fine on this list look like a parking ticket. The stove crowd swears nothing else dries out a wet winter van the same way, and they're right. So is the fire marshal. Both things fit in the same sentence, just not in the same van. Number 9. The fake work van disguise. Somebody figured out years ago that nobody in America questions a work van, so the stealth crowd took it all the way. Magnetic decals reading ABC Plumbing on the doors, a pair of traffic cones set out behind the bumper, a clipboard on the dash, and a yellow safety vest hung over the driver's seat. Park that rig on any city street and it turns invisible for days. The trouble starts when the costume crosses a line, because several states treat impersonating a contractor or a utility crew as its own offense. Cones on a public street without a permit are a violation of their own. And if anything ever goes wrong nearby, the fake company name on the doors reads like premeditation to a detective. Bring up the plumber trick at any van dweller gathering though, and every head in the circle starts nodding, because no invention on this list bought more free nights of unbothered sleep. And remember that instinct for hiding a whole home inside honest-looking work iron, because that same instinct built number 1 on this list into a movement. Number 8. The bucket toilet. 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot. Pool noodles split around the rim. Trash bag liner, a scoop of pine shavings, and a person had a bathroom that cost $11 and never clogged. The invention was never the problem. The disposal was. Because at midnight, those bags went into gas station dumpsters, park trash cans, and highway rest stop bins, and dumping human waste in an unauthorized container is illegal dumping at minimum, a biohazard offense in plenty of jurisdictions, and businesses started prosecuting after finding out what was landing in their dumpsters. Fines run from hundreds into the thousands. The composting crowd will tell you that handled right, with the right materials and a legal disposal site, the bucket is cleaner than half the pit toilets the Forest Service operates. Handled right is the entire argument. The bucket never failed anybody. The shortcut at midnight failed plenty. Number 7. The flower pot furnace. Scroll any van forum from the early years, and you'll find the same photograph. 3 tea candles burning under an upside-down terracotta flower pot, passed around as a heater that runs on pocket change. Alongside it came the alcohol stoves flickering on plywood counters and the little propane burners glowing all night beside a polyester sleeping bag. The heat was real. So was everything else. A tipped candle in a carpeted van goes from glow to fire in under a minute, and carbon monoxide from any flame in a sealed cab builds silently while a person sleeps, which is why the van communities of that era kept losing people in the most peaceful-looking way imaginable. Fire codes, campground rules, and hard experience have pushed open flame heat out of sleeping vehicles almost everywhere, and the idling laws we already covered took away the engine as the backup plan, so the modern dweller faces the same freezing bunk with fewer legal ways than ever to warm it. The veterans of the candle years will tell you the flower pot rig ran fine for a decade if you respected it, gave it fresh air, and never once let it burn while you slept. They're the ones still around to say so. Staying warm was one battle. Feeding the burners was another, and the next invention on this list kept 1 million camp stoves running for years. Number 6. The green bottle refill. Those 1-pound green Coleman propane cylinders cost $4 or $5 each at any Walmart, and a full-time van dweller burns through them fast. So the road figured out the workaround. A brass refill adapter for $10 that lets a person fill those little bottles from a 20-pound barbecue tank at a fraction of the cost, from cylinder stamped single-use only. Here's the catch nobody reads on the adapter package. Refilling one at home is one thing. nothing. But the moment a refilled disposable cylinder rides down the road, federal hazmat transportation rules kick in, and knowingly transporting refilled single-use cylinders is a violation with maximum penalties that run into six figures. The cylinders themselves were never built for reuse. The valves seep, and a slow propane leak inside a closed van with a pilot light is its own countdown. The refillers point out they've topped the same bottles 100 times without a hiccup. The burn wards and the hazmat inspectors never saw it that way. Number 5. The mail-forward domicile. Living on the road creates a paperwork problem because every state wants an address, and a van dweller doesn't have one. South Dakota solved it. Spend one night in a Sioux Falls motel, sign up with a mail forwarding service in Box Elder, and a person walks out with legal residency, cheap vehicle registration, no state income tax, and no vehicle inspections. Whole fleets of vans and RVs wear South Dakota plates for exactly this reason, but the state's people actually park in caught on, and now several treat a vehicle garage year-round in their borders under out-of-state plates as registration evasion, with fines, back taxes, and penalties stacking by the year. Insurance companies have gone further, rescinding claims outright when the garaging address on the policy turns out to be a mailbox in a strip mall 2,000 miles from the crash. The full-timers call it the only honest option a homeless person ever gets from a DMV. The auditors call it fraud. The gap between those two words is where the fines live. Number 4. The chalk wipe. For decades, parking enforcement worked with a stick of chalk, a swipe on the tire, and a return trip 2 hours later, so people living in their vehicles learned to carry a rag, wipe the mark, or roll the van 6 feet forward and reset the clock. Cities treated a wiped mark as obstruction and wrote tickets accordingly, and the cat and mouse ran for generations. Then came the twist nobody saw coming. In 2019, a federal appeals court in the Taylor versus Saginaw case ruled that chalking a tire is a warrantless search that violates the Fourth Amendment. And just like that, the dwellers had technically been right the whole time. Enjoy the victory lap because it lasted about a season. Cities answered with license plate reader cameras mounted on patrol vehicles that photograph every parked car on every pass and time-stamp it in a database, and against a camera that logs every plate on every block. The rag in the glove box finally met a mark it couldn't reach. Number 3. The DIY electrical system. Solar panels got cheap around 2016, and suddenly every van build had a power system, 2 golf cart batteries from Costco under the bed, an inverter off Amazon, and wiring done by whoever owned the wire strippers. Lamp cord carrying loads it was never rated for. Inverters connected straight to battery terminals with no fuse anywhere in the circuit. Solar charge controllers zip-tied to plywood. The van fires wrote the rest of the story because an unfused battery bank short is a welding arc happening under a mattress, and vehicle electrical fires became the quiet epidemic of the van life boom. Insurance companies now deny claims flat out over unpermitted electrical modifications, and a burned van with homemade wiring gets picked apart by investigators looking for exactly that. And still, talk to anyone who wired their own rig and made it through and you'll hear real pride in their voice. The kind that comes from betting your own bed on your own work and winning. Pride, and a story about somebody's van that burned to the axles outside Ehrenberg. Everybody on the road has one. Number 2, the stealth van itself. Every invention so far lived inside the vehicle. This one is the vehicle, because somewhere along the way, cities decided the van was the crime. Los Angeles wrote ordinances against living in a vehicle on residential streets. Dozens of cities followed with vehicle habitation bans, oversized vehicle bans, and overnight parking bans that exist for one purpose everybody understands and nobody says out loud. Break them, and the penalty isn't just the ticket, it's the tow, because impound fees and storage charges pile up past $1,000 inside 2 weeks, and a person who can't pay loses the van, which means losing the home, the transportation, and everything they own in one afternoon. For a few years, federal courts held that punishing people for sleeping in public when they had nowhere else to go crossed a constitutional line. Then in 2024, the Supreme Court's grants passed decision handed cities the green light, and the enforcement wave has been building ever since. The dwellers built the stealth van to disappear. The law built a system to make sure nothing stays hidden, which brings us to number 1, because one invention promised a way out of the whole trap legally and built the road's last great home. Number 1, the schoolie. Here's how it works. School districts retire their buses on a schedule, and a person could walk into a government auction in Tennessee or Texas and drive out with a retired Bluebird or Thomas school bus for $3,000 or $4,000. A steel roof, a commercial frame, and a mechanical diesel with a million-mile reputation under the hood. Gut the seats, frame in a bed in a kitchen with hand tools over a couple of Saturdays, and that bus became a 200-square-foot house that cost less than 6 months of rent in Denver. Whole families did it. Retired couples did it. For about a decade, it was the last real home a working person could buy outright. Then the doors started started closing. States require retired buses to be repainted from school bus yellow before they touch a public road. DMVs began refusing RV titles without certified conversions and inspections. Insurance companies started declining schoolies outright or quoting premiums that bury the savings, and RV parks across the country adopted 10-year age rules that turn a converted bus away at the gate no matter how clean the build is. Run one uninsured or wrongly titled today, and a single stop can stack fines, a tow, and an impound that takes the whole house away. The people who built them still call the schoolie the home the system took back. The regulators just call the matter closed. Depending on which side of the auction gate you stood on, both descriptions fit. Run back through that list and one thing jumps out. Not a single invention on it started as a stunt. People didn't wire their own batteries and rig bucket toilets because they were reckless. They did it because rent tripled, the shelters were full, and nobody else was coming to help. Some of these rules genuinely save lives, and an honest person has to admit that. But it's just as honest to say that the folks who turned rusted cargo vans into warm, dry homes with a jigsaw and a Saturday afternoon solved a housing crisis one vehicle at a time while the rest of the country argued about it. And that kind of resourcefulness deserves a place in the story, not just a line on a citation. If you've lived on the road or you're out there right now, drop a comment and tell us which of these you've run with your own hands and which ones we left off, because this list could easily run to 30. And if these stories hit home, hit subscribe, because next time we're digging into the discontinued campers and vans that old road veterans still swear were the best rolling homes ever built, and the reasons you can't buy a single one of them new today. Keep the wheels turning and the windows cracked.